Hi. Welcome back to my channel. Before we jump into today's video, I want to make a shout out to Worldpackers for partnering with us. I have so many good things to say about them that I'll be sharing a little bit later in this video, so stay tuned for that and the discount they have offered to my subscribers. So let's get straight into what this video is all about. Buenos dias, buenas tardes, buenas noches. I have been meaning to make this video for a long time now, since I slowed down with traveling and volunteering and found my more permanent home in Bolivia. This video is about the 11 months that I traveled, 6.25 months exactly that I was full-time volunteering, and I spent very little money while traveling to several countries. So in this video, I'm going to share some tips about traveling while volunteering, also a few hard lessons that I learned along the way, and just how to get the most out of your experience while volunteering and traveling. So I know this style of travel isn't for everyone all the time. Even for me, it's not all the time. But in my opinion, this way of travel is the way to travel. Because I understand after a lot of hard work, if you have very little time off from work, it feels good to go just lay on a beach, not have to think or do anything. I did the same thing after I graduated from college in Maui, and it felt really good at that time. But since I was very young, I have been very stimulated and interested by other cultures and ways of life, styles of dancing, food, and to really immerse in a location and also to contribute. So why do people volunteer when traveling? Usually it's for reasons like personal growth. I've met a lot of people, and I was also on a journey myself with just learning more about who I was, being able to disconnect from distractions, maybe from the more modern world or from your home space where you were born, to figure out like maybe what you want to do in the future with your career, lifestyles you want to live, you want to try out, you're not super sold on yet, like sailing or farming, things that are a pretty extreme alternative way of living. It's a way that you can just test those things out. Another reason people volunteer when traveling is also just to gain new knowledge and skills. And my personal favorite is to genuinely want to contribute to other communities. When traveling, I really made an effort to choose host destinations or communities where the person who was the leader of the community was native to that country, so that I could really get an understanding or a perspective of that country from a native tongue. How do you begin volunteering in the first place? If you've been watching my channel for some time, you've seen my journey from talking about South America and then packing up and selling everything in the States to leave it all behind and just come down south, trusting that I was probably going to end up somewhere full-time, which I have. I'm here in Bolivia. This is my home now. And my intuition was right about that. But I was really prepared to travel for a couple of years financially. I had saved up, sold everything there. And in this video, I want to share how much exactly I spent in that time of volunteering. And it's going to shock you how little it was, because it is a total myth that you have to have a lot of money in order to travel. I see people from all ages, whether you're receiving Social Security and spending that money, or whether you're an 18-year-old and you just work at a restaurant part-time. There's ways to last a while with very little money while traveling abroad. The way that you can do that is by connecting with, there's several websites out there, some ones with a big library of hosts with over 100 countries listed. There's Woofing, for organic farming. There's HelpX. Worldpackers is wonderful. Workaway is a really popular one. So you can go through these websites to arrange exchanges. The most common form of exchange that I've been accustomed to is 4 or 5 hours a day of work, 5 days a week. And the exchanges for accommodation and food. This can vary depending on the host, the website, the amount of work that you do. So it could be down to like 2 meals a day for 4 hours of work instead. Some sites even, you can have the opportunity to get paid a little bit. But there's also word of mouth. This is harder to do from the beginning when you're in your own country, but what I did is I started through these websites, these exchange websites, and then I started to build relationships while traveling. I made myself available consciously and open-minded and positive, which helped a lot of amazing opportunities fall into my lap. And I met amazing people who had a need that I could fulfill. So I just did like a word of mouth exchange and arrangement, which was incredibly powerful and beautiful and just radiated with love. Yeah, it really deepened my experience in some foreign countries. So I will say the perks of doing it online is that it's less risky, especially if you're like a younger woman. It's really important to check reviews of places that you're staying at. Like my rule before I made arrangements to go and stay with hosts was they needed to have multiple reviews, different perspectives. They didn't all have to be perfect reviews because some people travel and just, have a different mindset. So they might not enjoy something like you would, but overall, there needed to be like 5-star ratings that I could see. If a place didn't have reviews yet, I honestly just didn't risk going to those places. I've heard some horror stories from volunteers that they made an agreement beforehand to do like 5 hours of work a day, and they ended up being required to do like 10 or 12, and then they got underfed, like didn't eat or just very controlled portions, very little food. One of my tips is to really be loud and clear with your host about what the exchange is before traveling to them. That's kind of the risk you take too if you do it the word of mouth way. When you meet people along the way while traveling and they're inviting you to stay with them, if you're going to help them out a little, it's more risky for sure. But I will say that those were some of my favorite experiences. I think you really need to connect with your intuition and know how to listen to your intuition about if people are safe and trustworthy when doing it that way. All right, real quick before we continue, I want to talk a little bit more about Worldpackers. I personally reached out to Worldpackers to partner with them because I've had an amazing experience along with many other volunteers. One of the things that stands out about them above other exchange websites like Workaway is their double blind review process. So with Worldpackers, as you leave a review, you are not able to see the review that was left previously about you. Workaway, they don't really share many negative reviews. They'll leave like a 1-star, but not have the details below because they're just worried about conflict, I think, coming from that in the future. But I really appreciate the honest review process that Worldpackers has. Worldpackers also sports a curated list of verified hosts, a travel academy, and a support academy. So if a host offers a service or a side business that costs a little money that volunteers would have to pay, Workaway is not about that at all. They're more in favor of volunteers because volunteers pay to have profiles on Workaway where hosts don't. So you really know their priorities, that they're not so much taking care of host communities or encouraging any finances that they might gain from volunteers, which is, their own preference, and that's fine. But on Worldpackers, they do support these small businesses that are hosting volunteers and where they might be making income on the side as well for really cool services and at really cheap prices. So thank you, Worldpackers, for being extra supportive of hosts. Worldpackers also has a way that you can directly communicate them, and their response is very prompt, where Workaway is not the case. On Workaway, I've heard from volunteers and from hosts as well experiencing this, that they are very quick to take down profiles without even notifying you. This could be for different reasons, like there could be glitches in the verification process, something missing from their profile, or maybe they got a personal message from a volunteer who stayed at that host destination that wasn't so good or something they didn't agree with. And before really communicating with people, they just take you offline. All this being said, I really encourage you, if you're gonna join, to go through Worldpackers. And for my subscribers, they're offering a $10 discount on the annual membership. So you can access this discount in the link in my description box below. Now back to the video. For me, while traveling, I specifically looked for farming opportunities, but you can find just about any style, niche, way of living through a lot of these websites that you can volunteer at, whether it's like hostels, hotels, some other small businesses. But I wanted farming because that really interested me. It was something that I didn't have experience with, and I wanted to really connect with nature, animals, learn how to grow my own food. So I found a lot of farming opportunities. Woofing is a really good one for that on an exchange website, except you just have to choose your destination first when you make a profile on there before searching for hosts. I will say, like, farm work is a lot of work. I think it's important to have this open mind when traveling and volunteering, that you could work a little bit more than you negotiated at the beginning, only because it takes a lot to live life, as far as like cooking and cleaning and basic things that could feel like work, but it's just a daily life, right? Also on a farm, there's a lot of needs with animals. There's some emergencies, things break. It's really important to have integrity when going to a place, being willing to not just be looking at your watch like, I did 5 hours today, I'm off the clock, I'm like gonna disappear and not be helpful at this property or destination anymore. Like, I think the more willing that you are to help genuinely, you're gonna have the best experience, and you're really gonna be helping others, which is super important. But you know, it's also important to have boundaries, because you can be overworked by some hosts or taken advantage of, and vice versa, you know, the other way as well. I've heard this said before by volunteers, not many, but I also have met some volunteers that seem like they could be thinking this way. When you're doing a work exchange through these websites, it's easy to think like, I'm working for free, like it really doesn't matter how hard I work or how much time I put in or what I do. And we don't realize when we travel to places that we do leave a mark. So a piece of advice that someone gave me early on in volunteering that I really held on to and stuck with me was, when traveling to a destination and being in a community, working for someone or volunteering for someone, it's better to make their life easier rather than being a burden on them, which can be easy to do even subconsciously. As a volunteer, for example, just being more conscious of things that belong to them, knowing that, you know, the things in your room, in the bathroom, the tools you're using, you know, just trying to be really conscious of other people's things is an example. And also not treating your host like they need to babysit you or guide you through everything that you do. Like, it's okay, of course, to ask for tips on things to do in the area, ask for taxi numbers so that you can do things, but expecting your host to like be your personal driver and to like spend all day catering to you like an Airbnb kind of isn't really fair, and you end up being more of a burden than a help, really. So I really cherished that piece of advice that a host gave me very, very early on in my traveling journey. It made me just feel good about myself too, like have some integrity whenever I left a place, that I left a good mark behind. Another tip I have is something that really benefited me a lot was, before I traveled, I made sure that I had a couple of skills that I really could use while traveling to exchange, especially if I met someone randomly or if it was a tough application process because a destination was competitive to get into. Like some profiles will actually have you fill out an application, and because they get so many inquiries and interest, because it's a wonderful experience and destination. And how I made sure that I stood out is I got certified in yoga early on. Yoga teacher, I got certified, I got my yoga certification. So I made sure early on in my travel that I got certified in yoga, so I could have that under my belt while traveling as a form of exchange, or even getting paid or making money if I was in a bind and needed to make money. Another skill that I had was video editing, content creating, because I started this channel and I had done a few professional projects before traveling. And I really got to use this skill, because what business now doesn't need content? Most of them do. And it's a great way that you can help a business that you believe in, if they're ethical and conscious, and really helpful to their community or to travelers. So having those two under my belt really helped me to help other people. Okay, so let's get into how much money I spent, or how little money I spent. It does cost money to travel, but it might not cost as much as you think. For 11 months, I traveled full-time, and I would do a work exchange for 1 to 3 months. And then in between that, I would refill my cup. I had enough finances to get Airbnbs and to actually relax and go with the flow of things. And there was a lot of lockdowns happening at the time, so I had to be flexible, right? But for 6.25 months straight, I was full-time volunteering, and I spent, how much did I spend? $2,426.50. And this included 7 flights. So this included 6 or 7 countries, I believe. So it included my flights. This also included food and a couple of tours that I did in destinations, and a little extra money that I spent. What this didn't include was Alcohol, I didn't include that. So if you're a drinker, that could be a big expense. There were some times that I was partying a lot, especially when we were on like the sailboat and anchored in Haiti. Like we enjoyed drinks, and this also didn't include things like health insurance. You can pay very little for health insurance while traveling, or a lot depending on how much coverage you're comfortable with. So little things like that I'm not including, but less than $2,500 in 6 months is what I spent. Nuts. And I did not expect that. This also leads me into how you can really get the most out of a destination that you're traveling to. And when I say that is, to me, getting the most out of a destination is to like contribute to a place and to have a more rare experience than like a major tourist, if that makes any sense. Like, it's important to have a little extra cash on you in each destination that you can spend money on. For one, you can contribute to the multiplier effect in a community, which means if you bring money from your economy, your country, you spend it in another smaller community, you're contributing to that economy because that money is going to get cycled around somehow, by people spending and purchasing things. Really, to get a lot from your host destination is to spend money on things outside of the big touristy things to do. For instance, your host could offer Spanish classes, which I took a few Spanish classes to also support her business at a vegan farm. They could offer soap making classes, composting making classes. Where I live, we offer mountain bike tours for super cheap, and it's like world-class rides. And so you get a lot from these unique ways of supporting the local community. I didn't do some really touristy things in some countries I went to because I wanted to have more authentic experiences and things that were recommended by locals. If you're driven by ego and want to check a whole bunch of things off your bucket list so you can brag about it later and tell people you went and saw something, like the salt flats in Bolivia or like Machu Picchu in Peru, then that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that because those places are freaking amazing, right? But I'm just saying you're actually going to get a lot more for a lot less money and be able to do more things if you come with a budget to actually spend a little on things recommended by locals. I will say, Machu Picchu is insane. I got really close to not doing it, but I was there in Sacred Valley already, and it opened in early 2021. And there were 5 of us in the entire park, which has never happened in Machu Picchu tourism history. So I'm really thankful that I went to go see it, and it's really worth the hype. But I also will say that I was recommended a hike behind Ollantaytambo, right outside of Machu Picchu, by a local. And it was 4 hours of me wandering through this forest with wildflowers and rivers in it, and I ended up at this ruin. There would normally be no one there, but there happened to be a group of people who live there that went up together, and the views were just insane. And I felt like it was just as good as Machu Picchu, honestly, and I did it for free. I really was able to connect with nature and the energy that came from that place that was really ancient and less touched, Yeah, I recommend doing more local things. So the last couple things I want to say is leave a review for your host if you're on a website. Every single time you leave a place, especially if you had an incredible experience, it helps the host go a really long way, and it encourages them to leave you a review in return. And if you're confident in the work that you did and had a great experience, it can also help the next person who's interested and maybe going to visit that host as well. So reviews are super important. And I think that's all I'm going to share in this video. I could share, honestly, a lot more about my experience traveling. Last thing I want to say is please subscribe to this channel. Simon and I have another channel, our permaculture one. We'd love for you to go check us out there for more information on permaculture tutorials and things you can do in your garden and your homestead, if that ever interests you. And if you would just like to support the things that we're doing and be more active, there's a monthly subscription on Patreon. We'd really appreciate you joining our community there. And it's also just super helpful to subscribe, and share this video and other videos that we make. So I hope this was helpful. I hope this encourages you to travel and to be helpful and have a great attitude. I promise you'll have the absolute time of your life if you follow some of these tips. So I'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks. Bye.